Rental prices in Sydney and Melbourne are increasing despite prices stalling in other cities across Australia. The latest PropTrack report indicates rent rose 2.3% in Melbourne and 1.8% in Sydney in the December quarter. Joining me live is Executive Director for Better Renting, Joel Dignam. Joel, thanks so much for your time. So we're seeing these increases in Melbourne and Sydney, but not elsewhere in other parts of the country. What's going on here?
I suspect that part of what we're seeing is in Melbourne and Sydney in particular, rents are coming up from a lower base due to some of the population downturn we saw during COVID. And then these being centres where maybe there's much more of a student population coming back into the cities, that's putting a bit more demand in the rental market, and we might not be seeing those same trends in other cities in Australia.
Okay, so you mentioned the students coming back into the cities. So, you know, those big, we've been seeing on telly and online, those massive queues at rental inspections. There's a lot of competition out there at the moment. Is that for all rental properties that we're seeing in Sydney and Melbourne, or is it under a specific price point, do you think?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges is once there's more competition at the lower price point, it then pushes people who then have to try to spend more or accept a very low quality dwelling. Obviously, everyone wants a cheap rental. A pattern that we're seeing across Australia is that people who are maybe on middle incomes are often taking the cheaper rentals, which sort of leaves not much left for people on lower incomes. And there's been this real gap in that more affordable, cheaper rent side of the market for some time now.
What would have to happen for vacancy rates to start falling? And is this a big problem mainly in Sydney and Melbourne, that it's the real low vacancy rates that we're seeing right now is pushing prices up?
Yeah, so I think the vacancy rates are an indication of what's going wrong, which is that rentals are getting snapped up really quickly. There's not much on the market at any given point in time. When you're looking, you want to get a place really quickly because of that pressure, and so there's fewer options. What would make a really big difference is obviously having more properties out there in the rental market. Now, that might come from the private sector. It's obviously an area where the government, Commonwealth, state governments can play a big role in actually leading and taking responsibility for supplying that. We'd also like to see a state rental reform to address some of the causes of leases ending, like unfair evictions. If people aren't getting kicked out of their home without a reason, then they're not going to be out there looking for a rental.
From this Saturday, the practice of rental bidding will be banned in New South Wales, and regulators will be doing a sweep of sites, handing out fines to those doing the wrong thing. I think it's $5,500 for individuals and around $11,000 for companies. Will this help take some of the heat out of Sydney? Melbourne already has these laws in place, but they're seeing rents still increasing.
Yeah, one of the challenges with when governments do this is they are preventing solicited rent bidding. So if agents are out there encouraging renters to offer higher amounts, and hopefully they'll get caught and fined for that, but renters can still voluntarily offer higher amounts, and landlords can still accept that. When you have that fundamental pressure in the rental market, when there isn't enough out there that's affordable for people, you are going to see people offering more, and just stopping solicitation isn't going to address that, sadly.
Is Airbnb short-term leasing having an effect on the vacancy rate, or is it negligible?
I think it really depends on the area you're looking at. We hear from renters who are in some sort of tourist centres like Lismore, for example, who really see the impact it's having in their community, and it's really clear that the supply of long-term rentals there has just vanished in some cases. Obviously, there have been different impacts in an area like Lismore, but particularly as tourist destinations, short-term rental is taking properties out of the rental market and having a really negative impact on those communities, making it harder for employers to find workers, making it harder for people to stay in the communities. We certainly think it's an area that government should be looking at the harms associated with that and seeing what we can do to keep the benefits that it might generate, but reduce those harms.
Joel Dignam, great to chat with you. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you.